It began in April 2023, when a team of surveyors mapping old railway tunnels near Kongsberg, Norway, uncovered a sealed steel hatch buried behind layers of concrete and frozen soil. The hatch was unmarked except for a faint serial number, WKN9 1945, and traces of a swastika barely visible beneath corrosion. Inside lay a forgotten corridor descending into bedrock, the walls lined with rusted cables and air ducts. Local authorities expected an abandoned wartime storage site, but radiation scans and cryptic German inscriptions told another story. Within days, Norwegian defense officials closed off the site, citing environmental hazards, and all public records vanished from municipal archives. Yet fragments of footage leaked from a worker's phone showed an emblem never before catalogued in any historical registry: a black eagle clutching a lightning bolt, encircled by the words Project Natterglas. Whatever was hidden beneath Kongsberg had survived untouched since the final days of the Reich, and someone, somewhere, had wanted it to stay buried. Chapter 1: The Discovery Beneath Kongsberg. When the hatch was first pried open, it released a stifling rush of metallic air, as though the bunker itself had been waiting to exhale. The Norwegian mapping crew, contracted by a private energy consortium, had no idea what they were standing above. Coordinates logged at 59.6728 degree N, 96,502 degree E placed the tunnel outside any known wartime registry. Within hours, local authorities were called in, followed by two unmarked black vehicles that arrived from Oslo under the escort of the Norwegian Defence Logistics Organisation. By nightfall, the entrance was sealed again, perimeter fencing erected, and an official notice appeared online stating that the site was now under temporary military quarantine. 2 weeks later, leaked internal memos from the Directorate for Cultural Heritage referenced foreign military interest and containment protocols. Journalists tracing the procurement logs discovered an anomaly: a 24-hour requisition of high-frequency spectrum analyzers and Geiger counters marked under Project Reference 11KB23, equipment typically used for testing signal emissions rather than archaeological safety. The public statement about environmental risks no longer made sense. In June 2023, investigative journalist Erika Hald from Dagbladet obtained a single high-resolution photo from inside the chamber before it was sealed. The image showed a narrow corridor reinforced with corrugated steel and cables running along the ceiling. Faded German lettering spelled Nachrichtenzentrale Nord, Northern Signal Command. At the far end stood a door welded shut, its surface engraved with a circular emblem of an eagle overlaid by a lightning bolt. Analysis confirmed the symbol's resemblance to markings from the Reichspostministerium's Wartime Communications Division, though this exact version was undocumented. Beneath the emblem was a stenciled codename: Project Natterglas. Declassified Allied intercepts from 1944 had mentioned the word Natterglas once. In a British intelligence memo labelled CXPD4487, describing a rumoured radio experimentation site somewhere near the Norwegian frontier, it was dismissed as misdirection, one of hundreds of phantom projects fabricated by retreating German units. Yet here, beneath Kongsberg, was tangible proof that it existed. In August 2023, an anonymous file appeared on an encrypted research forum used by European historians. The upload contained 8 scanned pages from a 1952 NATO engineering report titled Underground Communication Installations, Non-Listed Facilities. The report's appendix referenced an inspection of an unmapped subsurface complex in southern Norway, presumed German origin, containing anomalous residual electromagnetic activity. The site was classified as inactive but recommended for further monitoring. The file was signed by a Major G. Whitcomb, Royal Engineers, and stamped Level 3, Eyes Only. As interest grew, the Norwegian Armed Forces released a brief statement asserting that the facility had been neutralized and rendered safe, denying any foreign involvement. However, commercial satellite imagery from September contradicted that. Infrared scans captured heat signatures near the entrance consistent with active generators. Independent analysts from the European Geospatial Institute confirmed the presence of intermittent light sources underground, suggesting electrical systems still functioned. By early October, fragments of an older mystery began surfacing. In 1945, local farmers near Kongsberg reported strange noises from the hills, rumbling machinery long after the German retreat. The Norwegian resistance recorded the activity in coded messages, archived as Mailorg Dispatch 1945-12b. Those files remained sealed until 1979. Dispatch described a possible underground radio relay and movement of uniformed personnel at night. At the time, Allied forces assumed it was a remnant of retreating Wehrmacht units. Now, with the bunker's rediscovery, the report's phrasing carried a new weight. When the National Archives of Norway released the Kongsberg excavation permits to the public in late 2023, most pages were routine, but one entry, dated 17th April, stood out. Presence of unknown metallic framework and a central console. Power grid estimated inactive. Requesting specialist from the Norwegian Defence Research Establishment. That specialist, identified only as HL, never appeared in subsequent logs. His contact details were redacted. In early 2024, a former intelligence technician came forward under pseudonym Niels. He claimed that the console discovered within the chamber was unlike any standard communications array. According to his account, it consisted of a circular panel with concentric dials labelled in both German and English, powered by what appeared to be a hybrid vacuum tube assembly. He also alleged that when the equipment was briefly connected to a modern power source, it emitted a low-band signal lasting approximately 4 minutes before shutting down on its own. It wasn't broadcasting, he said during a recorded interview. It was waiting for a response. Further investigation uncovered a cross-reference in US archives. In 1954, an Air Force intelligence memorandum, a FOSI Ref, NOR 23-117, described residual coded bursts emanating from Scandinavian latitudes matching German war-era frequencies. The source was never identified. Internal recommendations labelled the signals as ghost emissions, a term used for unexplained background transmissions. Before closing the case, modern engineers examining the recovered blueprints believe Natterglass might have been an experimental long-range detection network designed to read electromagnetic disturbances from atomic tests, decades before the West officially developed such capabilities. If true, it would imply that remnants of the Nazi communications division were already working on early nuclear monitoring technologies, possibly integrated into Allied intelligence operations during the first years of the Cold War. By the end of 2024, international pressure forced the Norwegian government to acknowledge the site publicly. They confirmed the existence of a historical military installation of unknown origin, but denied all speculation regarding nuclear or experimental activity. Yet locals near Kongsberg began reporting restricted airspace notices and unmarked convoys travelling at night toward the excavation zone. Satellite data from March 2025 captured the final trace. A heavy-lift helicopter departing the site at 02:14 a.m., carrying a cylindrical container approximately 4 meters long. The flight plan was registered to a defense contractor based in Brussels. 2 days later, all access roads were permanently closed, and the official record of Project Natterglass was marked contained. Still, whispers remain among those who worked the excavation of a second hatch deeper within the tunnel and of an internal chamber yet unopened. Whatever technology was buried beneath Kongsberg may have survived untouched since 1945, waiting silently for the world above to rediscover its signal. Chapter 2. The Natterglass Archives Unsealed. In January 2025, 7 months after the Kongsberg discovery, a data leak originating from the Norwegian Defence Research Establishment began circulating through encrypted intelligence sharing channels. The leak, an 11.4 gigabyte archive labelled NDRE Ref Pro J 1945-NG, contained thousands of scanned pages, spectral analyses, and decoded transmissions connected to Project Natterglass. While no government formally acknowledged its authenticity, metadata analysis confirmed the scans originated from a secure Oslo military server. For the first time, investigators could reconstruct fragments of what the project had been designed to achieve. The earliest document in the archive, dated 14th March 1944, was a memorandum addressed to SS Obergruppenführer Hans Kammler, head of the Nazi Special Weapons Division. It described the establishment of a northern relay laboratory under the cover of a civilian mining site. The memo referenced Funkmessenlager Type A4, a signal reflection array designed to monitor atmospheric disturbances at extreme range. A hand-scrawled note in the margin read, in German, Response phase testing delayed, awaiting command from Berlin. Beneath it was a signature, partially smudged but legible. H. Schreiber, Oberstingenieur. Cross-referencing wartime personnel files revealed Schreiber had vanished in 1945 after being transferred from Peenemünde. The V2 Research Center, another report, stamped Geheim, WKM 1744, described the installation of an underground network near Kongsberg consisting of two main modules, a communications relay chamber and a lower test shaft extending 90 meters into granite. Its purpose was listed as phase resonance Versuch 12 or phase resonance test 12. The document included crude frequency graphs showing energy spikes far above normal shortwave transmissions. Labeled Natterglas Stufe C, the resemblance between these data patterns and those from later nuclear detection networks built in the 1950s was uncanny. Among the most disturbing finds were transcripts of intercepted post-war communications between unidentified Allied intelligence officers. One message, dated 3rd of February 1952 and marked From Oslo Liaison Section to NATO Shape, confidential, read, recovered unit operational but unstable. Local sources claim interference coinciding with atmospheric anomalies. Recommend continued monitoring under joint scientific oversight. Term Natterglas remains sensitive, avoid in documentation. This memo, signed by Captain L. Brandt, was confirmed through declassified NATO personnel rosters to belong to Captain Lawrence Brandt of the British Signals Corps. Brandt had served in Operation Paperclip liaison duties before abruptly resigning in 1953. The leaked archive also contained grainy photographs of the interior, metallic walls lined with analog instruments, their labels corroded but legible. Feldmessgerät 9B, Spektralsteuerung and Ionenzählgerät. The images were consistent with early signal amplification devices rather than weaponry. But one photo in particular drew attention. It depicted a console with a single round indicator light, still faintly glowing after decades underground. The timestamp showed it was taken in May 2023, the day the hatch was opened. Researchers at the University of Oslo's Department of Historical Technology reconstructed the likely function of Natterglas. Their conclusion: it was a prototype detection grid meant to read fluctuations in the ionosphere, possibly to trace the energy signatures of high-altitude detonations. If accurate, this placed the program decades ahead of its time, preceding the first US atomic test detection systems by nearly 10 years. How the Germans acquired the theoretical basis for such research remains unclear. The archive included post-war correspondence that hinted at Western involvement long after 1945. A typed memo from the Norwegian Ministry of Defense, dated 6 November 1956, referred to continued technical assessment under Project Nightglass, NATO codename. It instructed engineers to ensure removal of foreign inscriptions prior to documentation. Another entry, handwritten in English, added, American observer en route. Deliver partial results only. The observer's identity was redacted, but a partial signature ending in D. Lovell led historians to suspect a link to Dr. Daniel Lovell, a US Air Force physicist who had previously analyzed early Soviet nuclear tests. By mid-2025, independent journalists began tracing the physical evidence. A small team from Der Spiegel traveled to the outskirts of Kongsberg to interview retired locals who remembered Allied engineers working in the hills during the early 1950s. One witness, 91-year-old Harold Engen, recalled hearing foreign voices, maybe English or Dutch, near the tunnels, followed by loud humming sounds at night. When asked if he'd ever seen the entrance, he nodded. They built something underground. After the war, the Norwegians said it was sealed, but I saw men in US uniforms there for years. The emerging picture suggested a post-war collaboration to repurpose German research under NATO supervision, with Norway acting as a host for covert signal experiments. But what the bunker was actually listening for remained uncertain. Several recovered telegrams mentioned Anomaly Ereignis 745, translated as Anomaly Event July 1945. The file attached to that code was missing, though its index number 44NA09 appeared again in a declassified 1958 US Air Force document titled Electromagnetic Disturbance Reports, Northern Hemisphere, 1945-1947. The pages discussing that event were blacked out entirely. In July 2025, under public pressure, the Norwegian Parliament held a closed session to address the growing scandal. Defense Minister Ingrid Solheim confirmed the existence of the Natterglass installation, but claimed it was a failed wartime radio experiment of no scientific consequence. However, a leaked transcript of that session revealed that behind closed doors, Solheim admitted to an unexplained residual signal still being monitored from the site's coordinates. Signal analysts working with independent observatories later confirmed a faint pulse, cycling every 11 hours on frequencies between 14.2 and 14.4 MHz, just above amateur radio bands. The pulse matched none of the known natural or artificial transmissions catalogued in Europe. It wasn't constant, nor did it carry data. It was simply there, repeating, faint but deliberate. The discovery of the Natterglass archives changed the investigation from a historical inquiry into an active mystery. Whatever was built beneath Kongsberg had not gone silent, even after 8 decades. The question haunting every researcher, engineer, and archivist was no longer what the Nazis had created, but who was still listening. Chapter 3. Operation Silent Verge Declassified. On 18 September 2025, The Guardian published a leaked NATO dossier that would force every intelligence service in Europe to confront a buried truth. The document, stamped Top Secret, Shape, SIGINT Division, 1952, bore the codename Operation Silent Verge. It confirmed, beyond speculation, that the Allied powers had taken direct control of Project Natterglass after the war. The 148-page report, partially redacted but authenticated by military archivists in Brussels, revealed that what began as a captured German experiment evolved into one of the first joint Western intelligence programs of the Cold War, one never meant to be acknowledged. The earliest entries described Silent Verge as a post-conflict assessment and continuation of German atmospheric signal research. According to the file's table of organization, the program was overseen by the Allied Communications Research Unit, ACRU, a body that officially never existed. Its listed personnel included engineers from Bletchley Park, radiophysicists from MIT's Radiation Laboratory, and 2 unnamed former technical specialists of German origin. The stated objective: to verify the persistence of anomalous transmissions originating from coordinates designated WWII, believed to be autonomous electromagnetic phenomena. Contained within the report was a field summary dated 12 June 1951. It detailed an expedition to the Kongsberg site led by Major George Whitcomb, Royal Engineers, whose signature had appeared on the earlier 1952 inspection log. The summary described the discovery of intact mechanical subsystems, non-standard frequency converters, and an operational vacuum network array. The devices were disassembled and shipped to a classified facility in RAF Fylingdales, where they were reassembled for further testing. The results were alarming. When reconnected, the apparatus emitted a narrow band oscillation that mirrored ionospheric patterns detected over the Barents Sea. The oscillation repeated every 660 minutes, 11 hours, exactly matching the signal that modern analysts had rediscovered in 2025. The memo concluded with a terse recommendation: maintain surveillance, no public release, possible Soviet interest probable. A secondary note from the same month, handwritten in blue pencil, added, "Do not attempt reply transmission. Unknown origin of reflected signal remains unresolved." For years, historians had speculated about why certain Cold War listening stations in Northern Europe were built where they were: remote valleys, abandoned mining zones, or near glacial ridges with poor civilian access. Silent Verge now provided the answer. These facilities were not merely for Soviet eavesdropping, but served as an extension of the Kongsberg experiment, designed to triangulate whatever phenomenon Natterglass had detected. Between 1951 and 1957, the report chronicled 11 documented signal events, each coinciding with major atmospheric disturbances: solar flares, aurora peaks, and 1 atomic detonation test in Semipalatinsk. The most significant entry was dated 1 November 1952, 3 days after the United States detonated its first hydrogen bomb in the Pacific. At 22:41 GMT, all 3 Silent Verge monitoring sites, located in Norway, Scotland, and Greenland, registered identical bursts of high-frequency resonance, followed by a complete blackout lasting 90 seconds. In the aftermath, instrumentation at Kongsberg recorded an additional, unexpected anomaly, a returning signal that appeared to originate not from space, but from beneath the ground itself. The engineer's notes conveyed confusion rather than fear. Local reflection impossible, one wrote. Signal strength exceeds input, source undetermined. A later annotation added, could indicate deep geological conduit. Further excavation denied by command. The denial came directly from the US Strategic Air Command liaison, citing potential risk of nuclear material exposure. No further excavation was attempted, and within months the site was sealed again, this time under NATO jurisdiction. By 1954, Silent Verge shifted focus from experimentation to suppression. An internal directive ordered the removal of all German markings, the destruction of redundant equipment, and the relocation of critical components to undisclosed facilities across Western Europe. Among the transfer logs was a shipping record labeled cylindrical container, type IVA, measuring 4.1 meters in length, the same dimensions later captured in 2025 satellite imagery during the removal from Kongsberg. The container's destination was redacted, listed only as Depot 9 Zonal Control. Declassified appendices included transcripts from an emergency meeting held at SHAPE headquarters on 5 May 1955. The dialogue, recorded on reel-to-reel tape, captured a conversation between US Colonel James Holbrook and British physicist Dr. Malcolm Shaw. Holbrook's voice, distorted but clear, read aloud. If this is residual radiation, it doesn't match anything from our tests, Shaw responded. Then it's not radiation. It's communication. After a pause, Holbrook asked, from whom? To which Shaw replied simply, from whoever built it. The transcript ended there, marked end of session, secure disposal recommended. Modern analysis of Silent Verge documents suggests that Allied scientists feared the signal's recurrence implied a form of automated response, not necessarily intelligent but systematic. It repeated with mathematical precision, unaffected by solar cycles, human interference, or environmental change. To contain public speculation, NATO communications logs from the 1960s reclassified all anomalies from the region under a new label, ionospheric inversion events, IIE region 47N. The official explanation attributed them to natural electromagnetic resonance caused by auroral interactions. But one final section of the report, Annex G, was only partially redacted. It listed ongoing deep storage facilities for Silent Verge components as of 1973. The last entry read, Containment Unit 12, Svalbard Archipelago, inactive. When Norwegian journalists requested confirmation, the Ministry of Defense refused to comment. Satellite imaging later showed a recently regraded area near Longyearbyen, consistent with underground construction. The release of Operation Silent Verge set off a political storm. Parliamentarians demanded accountability for Norway's decades-long concealment of NATO experiments. Yet, amid denials and diplomatic maneuvering, one chilling fact stood out. The 11-hour pulse detected in 2025 was identical in frequency, amplitude, and phase to the final Silent Verge transmission recorded in 1952. In an interview with NRK, Professor Janne Løkke of the Norwegian Institute for Radiophysics summarized what every investigator now feared to say aloud. Whatever they built under Kongsberg, she said, is still operating on its own schedule. It doesn't respond to interference, and it doesn't decay. Something continues to transmit from that depth, and we have no idea what it's talking to. Chapter 4. The second hatch opens. By late October 2025, public scrutiny around the Kongsberg site had reached a boiling point. Satellite images showing new excavation work contradicted official claims that the area had been sealed. Drone footage, briefly available before takedown, revealed a temporary structure built directly over the original access tunnel. Rumors spread that the Norwegian government, under pressure from NATO's scientific committee, had authorized a controlled re-entry, officially for environmental assessment, unofficially to locate what internal memos called Subsection B. For those who had followed the case from the beginning, this meant one thing: a second hatch existed, and it was finally being opened. On 2 November 2025, local residents reported a power outage lasting nearly 6 hours, affecting the entire valley east of Kongsberg. The following morning, a logistics manifest leaked through a defense contractor's whistleblower network listed 1X heavy containment vessel, unmarked, loaded for air transport. The accompanying dispatch form cited the same classification label used in Silent Verge. Type IVA cylindrical container. The helicopter carrying it departed at 04:17 hours toward an unregistered flight path north. What was taken or retrieved was not immediately known. 2 weeks later, an independent journalist named Mikael Sørensen published a short video clip obtained from a subcontracted drilling operator who had worked at the site. The footage, time-stamped 26 October, captured the moment a mechanical drill struck an unexpected hollow beneath the main corridor. A metallic clang echoed through the feed, followed by the sound of rushing air. The camera panned down into a newly exposed shaft, smooth, reinforced, and descending vertically into darkness. A voice in Norwegian muttered, "There's another door." Moments later, the recording ended abruptly. Forensic audio analysts confirmed the background hum in the video matched the same 14.3 MHz frequency associated with the Natterglass signal. The implication was clear. Whatever was transmitting might not be a relic at all, but something still active below. In December, a set of declassified documents from Norway's National Security Authority, NSM, added new dimensions to the story. File RF4 NSM EXC25-41 included a detailed engineering diagram titled Unterabschnitt B, Energieversorgungskammer, meaning subsection B, power supply chamber. The schematic, dated February 1945, depicted a vertical shaft leading to a lower platform labelled Energy Quell, Type K. At the base was a circular structure resembling a containment chamber connected to thick conduit lines. Though written in German, one annotation in English was visible at the bottom. Field coil housing. Maintain isolation. The handwriting was later identified as belonging to Captain Lawrence Brandt, the British officer tied to Silent Verge. By correlating seismic surveys from 2023 with those blueprints, researchers at the University of Bergen estimated that the lower chamber lay approximately 70 meters below the main complex, untouched since the war. Ground-penetrating radar confirmed a metallic anomaly matching the dimensions of the diagram. Against public protests, excavation resumed under armed supervision. Witnesses described the moment the second hatch was exposed as eerily anticlimactic. Beneath layers of rusted steel and concrete sat a pressure-sealed door embossed with the Natterglass insignia, this time intact and gleaming as if preserved from decay. Radiation readings spiked, though still below dangerous thresholds. Inside the access tunnel, sensors picked up faint electromagnetic emissions forming rhythmic pulses identical to those detected by global monitoring stations. According to internal security briefings later leaked by the hacker collective, Nordnetics, the exploration team managed to open the hatch partially before orders from Oslo demanded an immediate halt. The reason? Unstable conditions detected, containment integrity uncertain. Yet 3 members of the team, speaking anonymously to Aftenposten, insisted that the chamber beyond had contained a structure still powered, describing a faint bluish glow emanating from beneath a glass dome. One of them added that cables leading from the chamber connected directly upward into the same consoles recovered from the upper section. In January 2026, classified correspondence between NATO's Strategic Scientific Advisory Group and the Norwegian Defence Ministry surfaced on a secure WikiLeaks mirror. One paragraph stood out. Preliminary analysis suggests self-sustaining magnetic induction loop consistent with early plasma confinement theory. Potential precursor to post-war nuclear fusion research. Immediate embargo on public disclosure recommended. The words self-sustaining and fusion appeared together only once more, in a 1958 US Atomic Energy Commission memo describing unknown German magnetic containment prototypes confiscated in Bavaria. Historians and physicists alike were divided. Some argued that Project Natterglass had been an embryonic attempt at developing magnetically contained energy systems, far beyond wartime capability. Others believed it was something simpler, yet equally disturbing. A broadcast mechanism designed to test how energy fields could resonate through geological strata. In both cases, the evidence pointed to knowledge years ahead of known technology. Then, in March 2026, a new anomaly occurred. Across northern Europe, radio operators reported brief disruptions on 14.3 MHz, synchronized to the same 11-hour interval. Unlike previous pulses, this one carried structured modulation, patterns resembling data packets, not random noise. An independent researcher in Helsinki decoded fragments that translated into repeated binary strings, forming the phrase Stuf 2 active, stage 2 active. The revelation triggered immediate panic within classified circles. Internal NATO monitoring logs confirmed simultaneous electromagnetic disturbances near Kongsberg at 22:41 GMT, the exact minute of the 1952 Silent Verge blackout. Emergency teams re-entered the site only to find the lower chamber completely flooded with groundwater, its interior inaccessible. By dawn, the transmissions ceased. Norwegian authorities declared the operation terminated for safety. The site was once again buried under reinforced concrete, and its coordinates permanently sealed from civilian access. But the timing of the pulse left investigators questioning whether the flooding had been accidental or automated. Weeks later, seismic sensors registered a minor tremor beneath the valley, followed by one final transmission, a brief rising tone lasting 4 seconds. It was detected in Norway, Finland, and as far south as Italy. Analysts at the European Space Operations Centre described it as a signal unlikely to originate from terrestrial reflection. No one could explain how a system built in 1945 could still transmit across continents in 2026 for those who had studied the project for years. The second hatch represented both discovery and containment, a moment when history physically shifted beneath their feet. What had started as a wartime communications experiment now seemed to blur the line between past and present. A machine buried deep beneath Norwegian granite, still whispering across the airwaves long after its creators had vanished. Chapter 5. The final transmission recorded. The morning of 11 May 2026 began without incident. Then, at precisely 09:02 GMT, every major monitoring station across Europe registered a synchronized burst at 14.3 MHz, the same frequency linked to Project Natterglass. Unlike prior pulses, this signal carried structured modulation, its duration recorded at 214 seconds. The European Space Operations Centre flagged it as a Class A anomaly, and Norway's Defence Research Establishment initiated lockdown protocols around the Kongsberg exclusion zone. Within hours, the government announced a complete communications blackout across Buskerud County. No explanation followed. What distinguished this final transmission was not its strength, but its precision. Oscilloscopes captured a distinct signature, amplitude modulations repeating in a binary rhythm consistent with coded data. Analysts from ETH Zurich reconstructed the stream and uncovered a timestamp embedded within the signal, 11:05:26:092 Saro. The transmission contained its own broadcast time, as though confirming intentional release. Following the timestamp was a sequence of 8 German words: Phase abgeschlossen, Beobachtung fortgesetzt, Antwort erwartet. Translation: Phase complete, observation continued, awaiting response. The phrase awaiting response echoed a line first seen in the 1944 memo from Oberstingenieur Hans Schreiber, the architect of Project Natterglass. His field notes, recovered from the Oslo archives months earlier, ended with the same 3 words. Forensic linguists confirmed identical phrasing and syntax. The conclusion was unavoidable. The system had been programmed to report completion, even 8 decades later. Whether this indicated automation or deliberate reactivation remains unknown. Following the May broadcast, a surge of classified activity spread across NATO's Northern Command network. Internal emails obtained by investigative journalists showed that defense satellites were retasked over Norway for 48 continuous hours. Energy readings from the region spiked briefly, then vanished. On 14th May, the Norwegian Prime Minister issued an emergency statement acknowledging technical irregularities at a decommissioned defense installation and confirmed that a cooperative investigation with allied partners was underway. 3 days later, all related documents were reclassified under Section 9 of the Norwegian Security Act, effectively removing them from public access for 75 years. Unconfirmed eyewitness reports from residents of Kongsberg described a series of low rumbles beneath the forest during those nights, followed by an orange luminescence diffused through fog. One retired electrician, interviewed by NRK Nyheter, swore he heard a hum like old broadcast static, only alive. His testimony was dismissed as anecdotal. However, a seismic report from the Norwegian Geological Institute, obtained through Freedom of Information requests, documented a localized resonance at coordinates matching the sealed site. The tremor pattern lasted exactly 214 seconds, the same duration as the final transmission. Meanwhile, digital investigators tracing the 14.3 MHz pulse discovered something even stranger. When overlaid against atmospheric ionization maps, the transmission had not dispersed randomly. Instead, its energy formed a geometric pattern, an equilateral triangle connecting 3 points: Kongsberg, RAF Fylingdales in the UK, and the former US air station at Keflavik, Iceland. All 3 locations were known silent verge monitoring sites. The implication was clear. The system had linked them intentionally, as though reactivating its original Cold War network. An emergency NATO briefing, dated 16th of May 2026, later leaked to Der Spiegel, contained a single paragraph under the heading Post-Event Containment Measures. It read, "Frequency 14.3 MHz remains under surveillance. Source origin revalidated as subsurface. Transmission architecture self-sustaining. Recommend complete electromagnetic isolation of zone WKN9 and continued observation under deep classification protocol." Beneath it, in handwritten pencil, a single line: "Do not attempt response." In the weeks that followed, the pulse ceased entirely. Radio operators across Europe reported silence, no trace of the 11-hour cycle, no residual echoes. For the first time in recorded data, the Natterglass frequency was quiet. Scientists debated whether the final broadcast represented an automated termination sequence or an external acknowledgement. Yet one detail remained. The broadcast ended not with a signal fade, but a sudden cut, as if a circuit had been switched off. By summer, the valley around Kongsberg was permanently sealed under federal protection. Satellite imagery revealed a new concrete structure above the tunnel, devoid of insignia, guarded by military patrols. Independent researchers, attempting to measure background radiation in the region, found their instruments jammed. Officially, the area was declared an environmental containment zone. Unofficially, NATO SIGINT divisions continued to monitor 14.3 MHz in real time, keeping its data stream encrypted and off civilian channels. In October 2026, a year after the first excavation, a final document surfaced briefly on an academic server before deletion. Its title, Natterglass PHZ Complete.pdf. The file's metadata traced back to the Norwegian Defence Network. It contained one sentence in English, unencrypted. Project concluded. No further observation required. No signature, no date, no classification header. Historians and scientists remain divided over what Project Natterglass truly was. Some argue it represented an early attempt at global atmospheric surveillance. Others believe it functioned as an experimental transmitter built on principles far ahead of its time. But among those who handled the original documents, a quieter theory persists, that the signal wasn't designed to communicate outward, but to maintain synchronization with something deeper, perhaps an automated mechanism beneath the granite that never fully shut down. The last confirmed recording of the Natterglass frequency exists today in the archives of ETH Zurich, labeled Transmission File 2609. When played, it emits a deep, rhythmic pulse that rises and falls in perfect 11-hour intervals, until at the 214th second, it ends with a sharp tone like a held breath. The audio waveform forms the outline of a single German word when visualized on a spectrogram: Warten, waiting.